In a world where Maitland McDonough, First Lady of Horror, speaks, and you have a front row seat. This is Maitland on movies, horror, double feature. So I understand you got to see another preview screening. What do we see this time?
We saw a movie called The Man in My Basement, which is a really great title because it could mean almost anything, but it's almost certainly scary.
Yes.
Basements are scary. Men in your basement are scary, particularly if you're a woman. You really don't want a man in your basement unless he's your nephew and you set up a cot for him down there or something. Otherwise, man in your basement is scary. However, in this case, it's not a woman who has a man in his basement. It's a young man who has just inherited a really fabulous house on Sag Harbor that's been in his family for generations and that is simply stunning. Beautiful views, stained glass, beautiful floors. Everything about this house is wonderful. Frankly, he's not really in a place, however, to keep this house going. He is chronically either un or underemployed. He's somebody who's clearly drifting through life. He really hasn't found what he wants to do, what he maybe needs to do. So, in one way, this house looks like it's a good thing because it's going to solve his issues about needing to pay rent, to deal with roommates, stuff like that. But he has other things going on as well that are kind of a problem. Those problems, however, really retreat into the background when a man knocks on his door, an older white man played by Willem Dafoe, which frankly ought to scare anybody because Willem Dafoe, yeah,
Oh, that's like the problem with Jack Nicholson in The Shining. It's like you look at him, it's like we're already up to crazy.
yep, yes,
There's
we
no
have.
build going on here.
No, none at all. Yeah, once this guy enters the story, you know that there is something very creepy going on. However, he makes what seems like a very reasonable and incredibly really needed this right now proposition, which is that he would like to rent the basement of this young man's house for a time that's not specified, but not forever. He just wants to rent it for a little while. And you can just see him thinking, okay, white people, they're strange. Fine. I will rent him my basement because I really need the money. I'm not working. I'm also in debt because I have a gambling issue and he has gambled far more than he could afford to lose and lost. So this seems like it's going to be really great for him. And if this guy really wants to live in the basement, then okay, it's great for him. Except that the living in the basement thing then takes a new twist, which is that his new boarder builds a cage in the basement for himself and moves into the cage.
Just
So
for full
now
moons, or
it's very odd, but you can see that the big thing he's thinking is, I'm a black man, and now there's a white man in a cage in my basement. And if anybody ever finds this out, I, I see no scenario in which this goes well for me.
yeah,
But he also doesn't really know what to do because doing anything would involve telling somebody there's an older white man in a cage in my basement.
yes,
So what this turns into eventually is the development of a sort of relationship. Well, it is a relationship between them, a relationship that it's very difficult to define because, on the one hand, the captive is a captive of his own desire. On the other, nobody else is going to look at that situation and think it's good. And
yeah.
there's no end to this situation that has been established. Maybe he's just going to be here for a while. Who knows? He might stay longer. I don't know. So the entire film is a film that is about power and balance and who's managing the power and how the other party is managing the fact that he is not in charge. Clearly, the man in the basement is in charge, even if he's in a cage, and he's naked too, because he quickly chooses to not wear any clothes. So now not only is there an old white man in a cage in my basement, there's a naked old white man in a cage in my basement.
And it's William Dafoe.
And it's Willem Dafoe, and who is disturbing under any circumstance. Now, what's great about this is that he's put in a physical position in this movie where he doesn't look as though he has any ability to do physical harm to anyone, because he is literally in a cage. But he has that insinuating voice that's not insinuating in the way of a lot of traditional villains, which is why he has not always played villainous roles, although he is often cast in them, because the combination of his voice and his looks is pretty scary.
Yes.
At his youngest, I don't think anybody ever looked at him and said, I want to put this guy in a rom-com. He would be great. That is just not the way Willem Dafoe's career was going to go, ever. So basically everything here, I mean, this is a two-hander, this movie. It doesn't matter. There are other people in it who wander in and out, but it is all about the relationship between these two men. And that's not everybody's taste in movies.
Yeah.
On the one, yeah, it's a lot of talk and not a great deal of action. But it is absolutely fascinating because, frankly, both of them are great. You expect that from Willem Dafoe, not so much from a younger actor whom you haven't seen in a lot. And their interactions become increasingly complex, even though they are purely conversational. It's totally it's a mental game from beginning to end.
And this is from a Walter Mosley novel?
It is based on a novel by Walter Mosley, and I'm sure his name is familiar to a lot of people, but they're familiar, I think, mostly with the fact that he's written a series of crime novels, right?
Yeah.
And this is not, there's no crime in this movie, and it doesn't contain any of the characters that he's written about in the past. This is a standalone in Mosley's body of work, and it is purely a mind game movie in a beautiful setting. The upstairs of this house is wonderful. The basement, it's a basement with a cage in it. But everything about it is about the power balance between these two characters. And on the one hand, it looks as though the young black man is probably in the better position because he is not the guy in the cage. On the other hand, the guy in the cage, yeah, should this situation ever come to light, is going to be able to say whatever he wants, do whatever he wants, and he will automatically get the benefit of the doubt.
Yes. And constrained spaces make for very interesting types of movies, and when you constrain it to the house and the metaphor that goes beyond that, or the cage being constrainment inside the basement, which is a constrainment, that's a lot of layering that can be played with. And I suspect from the look on your face, they did a pretty good job with all of that.
They did an absolutely fantastic job with all of that. This is a movie that is absolutely enthralling. And there are other things going on in it, including the fact that this young man has been talking about selling his grandparents' house because he doesn't have a lot of money. And the house is worth a lot of money, but it's only worth a lot of money if you sell it. Yep. If you're living in it, it's a house. And we all know the term the money pit.
Yes.
You know, even a terrific house is a money pit because there's constant upkeep. And this is a house by the water, which just adds to the upkeep issue. So, and he's not really in a position to deal with that upkeep. The obvious thing for him to do would be to take in a boarder and give a certain part of the house to that person who's living there and then collect rent.
He kind of does.
He kind of does have a boarder. And that boarder actually is paying, because that's another part of it. He's absolutely giving this guy money because he is not stupid and realizes, again, this is a situation where a young black man is not going to want an imprisoned white man in his cellar.
And the direction of money is another kind of power.
Money is another kind of power, and he doesn't have it. He is rich in property, for sure. I mean, he can sell that house, and he will have a lot of money that he can take and do with what he pleases. You know, move someplace he wants to live, take some time to figure out what he wants to do with his life while not worrying about the fact that he's paying rent or paying whatever he's paying to live wherever he's living. So,
or put it on a horse in the sixth and be right back where he started. Yeah.
Exactly. And since he has a gambling issue, although it's not horses, that is something that could very well happen. That's one of the reasons that he's in such bad financial shape. The other being that he is chronically underemployed. So he is in the middle of a real dilemma, and it is fascinating to watch. First of all, Willem Dafoe. Has Willem Dafoe ever been in anything in which he is not mesmerizing? Can you think of anything?
Not a single thing.
Not a single thing. He is one of those people who just commands the screen. And it's pretty remarkable because he's not conspicuously handsome. He is not somebody who looks like an approachable person. He doesn't have the likability that a lot of actors
He
build
produces a certain kind of fascination, and that keeps you watching.
It's the fascination of a rat watching a snake. That's what it is. You want to keep an eye on him at all times. Even when he's playing, you know, a sympathetic or at least a character you can empathize with. Frankly, his looks are such that he does not generally get cast in roles that, you know, there aren't romantic leads on his resume, even when he was much younger than he is now. It was just not the kind of screen persona he had, and he was clearly just fine with it.
Yep.
Yeah, he
This
was
is
like, yeah.
This is coming out soon?
This is coming out soon. And I should have the date ready to hand, and I do not, but it will be in theaters very soon. And it is well worth watching because, look, any kind of movie that can boil it down to two characters, each one with his, her, their own demons of one kind or another, put in a tight space and forced to deal with it in one way or another.
It sounds fascinating, and I look forward to seeing it in theaters. Thank you for sharing this with us.
And I really hope a lot of people go to see this movie because, frankly, it's a really hard movie to advertise. You don't really want to tell people a great deal about it. What we've talked about here is all you should know. The plus it has is Walter Mosley, who wrote the novel on which it's based. He has a following as a novelist, so there are going to be people who say, oh, Walter Mosley, I want to see this movie. And I hope they're not disappointed because this is not what they probably expect to be seeing. It's not basically a crime movie with an investigator who's investigating.
Yeah,
There's
my introduction to Walter Mosley was that when Netflix did Luke Cage Hero for Hire, in one of the episodes, there's a 5-minute section where two guys are just sitting in a barbershop talking about Walter Mosley and his impact on literature. And it's so watchable. This very, you're talking about talky, this incredibly talky moment in what's supposed to be a superhero show really was gripping because there's a lot to like in this man. There's a lot of amazing stuff that he's done.
Yes, there is. And there have been good movies. I mean, Devil in the Blue Dress is a terrific movie. But this is, again, not what you would expect from Mosley. And I think that's a great thing.
Well, the hope is it's like Stairway to Heaven, which is not typical Led Zeppelin, but it's the one everybody remembers. Sometimes those change-ups, if they're played right, become the most memorable piece you do.
That is absolutely true. And it would be great if this became, if not the most memorable, one of the most memorable adaptations of his work. On the one hand, I can't say I cannot recommend it highly enough because this is not a movie for everybody. And this kind of this is psychological horror of the first order, except that there are no monsters driving people insane. There's just a person and another person.
Zombie movies have taught us the people are the worst part. So yeah.
The people are the worst part. And it's a movie in which nobody ever talks about race. And yet the issue of race underlies all of it. Because I think you could make a good argument that if the owner of this house were a young white man, he would be much faster to go to the police and say, there's a guy in my basement. I don't know where he came from. I just went into the house. I don't think my grandparents left him there. And I need somebody to please come and help me remove this person who's squatting in a cage in the basement of my house.
I was watching a parody horror movie recently called The Blackening. And the outtake scene at the very end, after everything has happened, is the survivors are sitting around outside the house. And one says to the other, so what should we do? Call the cops? And they're all black, and they all start laughing hysterically at that as a punchline. Yeah.
Because, yes, that is a punchline.
Yeah.
And this is just the worst possible punchline in this situation. There's just no way. It truly is fascinating. And Corey Hawkins is extraordinary in it. He's an actor with whom I am not familiar, but having seen him in this movie, I'm going to be looking out for him in the future. And Willem Dafoe is Willem Dafoe. If nothing else, the fact that Corey Hawkins can absolutely hold his own with Willem Dafoe.
Well, he's been staring at us like all episode.
Yes, he has. And he's got a lot to stare about because of what's in his basement. I mean, you actually see him thinking in that image, what the fuck am I going to do about this? I don't see any good way out of it, any way that's going to work out really well for me. So, yeah, he is exceptionally good, and I'm going to be looking out for him in the future. When I see his name in the credits of an upcoming movie, that's immediately going to shift it more to the, yes, I need to see that side of Blockbuster.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you next week. On behalf of Maitland McDonough and myself, Charles Baruch, we wish you nothing but happy dreams.